Hi, I'm going to talk to you about a work by Swiss-American artist Marc Bülows. The title of the work is All That Is Solid Melts into Air. It was made in 2008, and I saw it in the 2008 Sydney Biennale on Cockatoo Island. It was quite hard to decide what work to talk about, mainly because there's so many works that I'm interested in, and different works are interesting for so many different reasons. I don't really have one work that I would call a favorite, or that is more, I suppose, of an influence than another. But I suppose this work fits in a kind of body of work that does particularly resonate with me. They're works that generally take on some sort of socio-political, environmental subject, and have I suppose, a kind of use a sort of documentary form in some respects. So the first thing you kind of encounter with this work, or the first thing I encountered with this work, was this incredible soundtrack. You heard it way before you kind of got close enough to the work to see the screens. And so this soundtrack was made up of voices, voices that were shouting, voices that were chanting, a real cacophony. And you didn't really know what the voices were at this point, because you hadn't quite got to the screens yet. But you could tell there was a lot of people, and it felt like there was a bit of a clash. So when you did get to the work and you encounter or two screens, so it's a two-channel work, and the two screens directly opposite each other in a kind of confrontational kind of setting. On one screen, you've got footage of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, or Stock Exchange, and on the other screen, you've got footage of freedom fighters from the Nigerian Delta, the Ijah people. And so the stock exchange, or the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, is a futures trading exchange, and so they're speculative, speculating on how much oil is going to be produced or might be produced, speculating on different kind of trade, different kind of socio-economic situations in terms of credit, in terms of debt, etc. And on the other side, the freedom fighters of the Ijah people, they're fighting the corporations and the government who are effectively taking the wealth of the region, which is a mineral wealth or oil, for their own profit. And the Ijah people are poor. It's a very poor region, even though the area is minerally rich. It's a bit of a tongue twister. And so one of the aspects, this work is quite layered, and even though in many ways it's kind of quite a simplistic work, which I think is one of the beauties of this work. So one of the layers of this work, and one of the points of interest for the artist, is this idea of sort of metaphysical. And so, on one side at the stock exchange, you've got the situation where people are trading on speculation. They're trading on things that don't currently exist. And then on the other side, you have you've got a traditional people who have a belief system whereby they believe that they are immune to bullets, that their war god will protect them. And this is something that's kind of quite hard to comprehend for a sort of westernized, modernized kind of perspective or audience. So you've got this kind of metaphysical, ritualistic kind of traditional spirituality on one side, and then this metaphysical kind of future trading, speculative kind of situation where people are like effectively betting on nothing on the other side. So, but this work, I mean, the other side of this work is that obviously these two subjects are directly related. And so this work kind of takes on a very sort of political stance. It's very much talking about issues of oil, wealth, poverty, um, global dominance of particular countries or corporations, privatization of mineral wealth, and also the sort of issues around the sort of inherent value or wealth within inside land and whose rights it is to own that wealth, or to make use of that wealth, and that's sort of how that wealth is distributed. The way in which the artist Mark Boulos deals with this subject is that he doesn't make any sort of statement. He doesn't criticize or condone anyone in this work. The work is purely observational. And the way that it kind of works is that, as he says, they're kind of like two separate films. They're edited, so there's a synchronicity between them. But they are separate films. And you could actually watch these films independently and find them quite interesting. They're quite incredibly shot. The footage, I mean, the access to both groups of people that he's filming is quite unique. But he doesn't make any kind of great, statements. Not about the stock exchange, not about the freedom fighters. That is purely built through contextualizing the subject matter by the positioning of these two screens. And so I think this is something that video art does really well, is that through actual installation it can kind of create a greater narrative, and without actually having to be explicit about that narrative, so it doesn't have to make judgment, doesn't have to take a standpoint, if you like. And then the other thing that this work does really well, and again I think video work can do this really well through installation, is that we become, or can become, by positioning ourselves between the two screens, the kind of third part of this this work, that we sort of embody this work. We're kind of like a third actor, if you like. And when you consider the subject matter, oil, global trading, poverty, you know, we are, whether we like it or not, then, you know, part of this kind of subject, part of this kind of global issue. You know, and in fact most people in the world are regarded, regardless of whether we're in a sort of a positive position or a negative position in with this. But, you know, this work lets us become part of this subject matter, and so we can then sort of, I suppose, in some ways feel the situation that's happening. So it is quite an intense work, but I think it's a really interesting example of how video can work in both an installative kind of way, in how it can have an incredible politic, but also create an incredible kind of like position where, a sort of poetic position where it doesn't have to make stance or make a standpoint or judgment, but can really kind of create a lot of, I suppose, thought and be very thought-provoking around a particular subject. So if you get to view this work, which I hope you do, I hope you kind of take the opportunity to really be immersed in it, and yeah, hope you enjoy it if you see it. Thanks.